wellnesscouch.com, streaming wellness into your lives.
You're listening to A Quirky Journey, the Healthy Family Podcast with your hosts Jo Whitten and Fuad Kassab. Hi everyone and welcome to A Quirky Journey. I'm Jo Whitten, your host, and today I don't have with me Fuad Kassab, my co-host, which is very sad, but he is away in Lebanon visiting his family, which is awesome for him and them. So we're on our own today, so we thought we'd do a bit of a girly podcast and answer some questions about women's health and hormones and fertility and the pill and ovulation and PCOS and hormone imbalances. Well, I said that, didn't I? PMS and gut health and these sorts of things, because we do get a lot of questions about this kind of thing, and I have the perfect person to answer them. And her name is Nat Kringadis, and probably a lot of you have heard of her. She's an amazing hormone specialist. I think that would be what you would call her. She will explain more about what she does in a minute, but she's a doctor of Chinese medicine. She's an acupuncturist, an author, speaker, and a natural fertility expert. And she also has a clinic in Melbourne, a women's health clinic called the Pagoda Tree. And she's the producer of Health Talks TV. So I've heard Nat speak a few times, and she's really down to earth, very genuine person. You know, sometimes you go to these seminars and talks and things, and you meet speakers and you sort of think, are they even real? Because they just seem so far away from your life. But Nat is really down to earth, and I just loved her from the first moment I met her. She's just so easy to talk to, very, very helpful. So if you have any kind of women's health issues that you need someone to talk to and you're not getting any luck with the practitioners you're talking to, or you're having struggles trying to get some help, Nat is a great person to talk to. And if you go onto her website, she will explain in the podcast, but if you go onto her website, you'll learn a lot about women's health, and there's a lot of free stuff on the site. There's also ebooks that you can buy on her site that don't cost very much and give you a really good basic understanding of all the different issues that women have with their health. And so she'll explain about that. But I just want to say that when we say it's about hormones and fertility, we don't just mean fertility as in trying to have a baby. A lot of people associate fertility with pregnancy, but being more fertile can actually improve your general health and well-being. So even if you're not wanting to have a baby, just working on your hormone health and your fertility will actually increase your overall health. So this is something that's really important for women, and I think also for young women, because they don't always realize the importance of these things until they suddenly get to the stage of wanting to have a baby. And then they are really struggling because they haven't looked after their hormonal health. They haven't looked after their gut health. And they just are really starting off on the back foot. So if you've got teenage girls, this is a great podcast to get them to listen to. There's also a book that Nat wrote. It's in my bookcase, and I'm just trying to see if I can find it. She will talk about it. Well and Good, it's called. That's a great one to buy, which she will have that in the notes on the podcast, because it really easily explains women's health issues and what to eat to be healthier with your hormone health, how to explain things simply for your daughters. It's something that, I think is really important. And the education that kids get at school really doesn't cover a lot of this stuff, and they don't understand it, and then they're sort of chucked into it in the deep end and don't know what to do. And I know I was told a lot of misinformation from professionals, so-called professionals. Well, I guess they were professionals, but maybe they didn't have the knowledge back, when I was growing up that they have now. Like Nat says, a lot of things change over the years, and I was given some information that did not help me at all. And it's, things that we have to work through later in life because we didn't know things earlier. So this is something that's very important for young women. Also, for those of you who are older, going through menopause, there's lots of help with that kind of thing as well. So we've answered a lot of questions that people posted in the chat groups and the gut health groups on Facebook, because I asked the question if any women had some women's health questions. So we've answered as many of them as we can. There was a lot of questions, so we didn't get through quite all of them. But we can get Nat back. So if you have more questions, please send us an email at help@quirkycooking.com.au, and we can do another podcast sometime and answer some more questions. And also make sure you pop over to Nat's Facebook page, Nat Kringadis, because she will be able to answer a few things on there as well. Okay, so we're going to get started on this podcast because it's an hour long. Just remember, if you do have any questions that arise out of the podcast, feel free to either email us at help@quirkycooking.com.au, or you can go over to Nat Kringadis' Facebook page, which we'll put the link in the notes, and you can ask on her Facebook page. I think you can message her, and she does have a lot of information on the website though, so have a look there first, because there's a lot that you can download. And you can even do a free trial of her program for $1 for a week. So that may be something you'd like to try as well. Very happy to have Nat on the show. And Fuad will be back on the next podcast. And then we're off to the Gold Coast for classes. Okay, on to the podcast. Thanks for listening, guys. Hello and welcome to A Quirky Journey. And today we have the wonderful Nat Kringadis. Hi, Nat.
Hello. How are you?
I'm so good, and I'm really happy to have you on the show because we've got lots of questions for you.
Lots of lady part questions, I'm sure.
Heaps. Boy, I don't think there's a woman I know that won't have a question for you.
Wow.
But don't worry, I didn't get all of their questions, so we'll go for an hour.
No problem. I think that because we're so complicated, that tends to be the case. We've all got something we could ask a question about.
I think so, but a lot of the questions will overlap. So I think the best thing to do would be, first of all, to get you to tell us a little bit about you and what you do and your story and how you started, getting into the line of work that you're in, because that will probably answer a lot of questions even straight away.
Maybe. I am by trade a doctor of Chinese medicine, and I have been practicing in clinic for around 14 years now. I've since then really have stepped into the space of women's health and, really tried to learn as much as I can, not just based on clinical experience, but also just keeping my finger on the pulse with what's coming through, because as you're aware, the more you learn, the more we learn from even a physiological perspective, the more we discover we don't actually know. And what we thought was, what we thought was gospel 2 years ago is now outdated and no, not the case anymore. And so I guess if, we look at how that evolved, I never, ever, ever chose women's health. Let me tell you right now, that
chose you.
Oh my goodness, that was the last thing I wanted to treat. I had women that were just flooding our clinic. I was a very inexperienced practitioner, and loads of women asking for help with their fertility in particular. And I didn't know how to help them. I didn't have the skills. I never learnt it at uni. And I remember one day saying, I never want to treat women's health. It's too hard. I don't understand what's wrong with these women. And never, it's just not my thing. I know, right? But I guess what happened was that just so many women, I could not turn my back. I had to actually start to listen to what they were asking for. And so I decided that if you can't beat them, join them and really start to explore some of the reasons why so many women were finding themselves in hot water with their hormones. And this is, maybe around 10 years ago, I guess. And things have certainly changed in that time. But, yeah, I really started to explore that, look into it further, get curious, use patients as guinea pigs, with them knowing, with their knowledge of this. And then, eventually I had this epiphany, I guess, that why wait till it's broken? If we started to reach out to young women and educate them about their bodies, perhaps I wouldn't be dealing with these heartbroken women who would say things like, if only I had known what you're telling me now 10 years ago. And, I think it's a really common belief process is sort of like, well, if I had known, I wouldn't have done it. But also, well, you didn't know and you're not the only one. And, there's so many people and women in the same boat, and to go gently and be kind, because there is a lot of information and we have been misled, unfortunately. And I don't really think that we can point the finger at any one person about that. I think that there's lots of contributing factors. But really the other thing I needed to do, my trade is Chinese medicine, and it's a very obviously old form of medicine, and it works fabulously. But, when we integrate that into modern treatments, I found that it's not that it was missing the mark, but, for example, if someone has no magnesium, they have no magnesium. No amount of acupuncture is going to change that. Yeah. So I decided that integrating both Eastern and Western philosophy was probably something that I really resonated with me. And it's very hard as a Chinese medicine practitioner. I know lots of us have to battle with that because it's not our craft. But I think, that was a big part of really getting some great progress and results with women, was when I actually started to integrate the two together. And so I made that really what the clinic was about. We have a boutique-style clinic here in Melbourne, and I really wanted women to feel like they would come for an experience, not just a diagnosis. And to really take their health on as our problem over the course of several months as we start to treat that. And that's where we are now. This is how we got to where we are, and lots of things have happened since, but it's really good.
And you've got a couple of podcasts?
Yeah, we've got so many things.
Come on, tell us.
I'm trying to dial that down, but at the moment we have a couple of podcasts, and we're very excited. We're just about to go on to podcast 1, which is really exciting. We've been picked up by that new network. So that's, any minute now.
Awesome.
And I do another podcast out of the US. And I think one of the most exciting things we've got at the moment is our membership. We've created a membership. I just wanted to create a safe place for women to come, to be curious, to ask questions, to be able to tap into some of my knowledge, but also feel supported by other women, because I think that's actually where the biggest disconnect has been.
I agree.
We've decided that we need to go alone, and that no one else could possibly be experiencing what we might be, and we're ashamed of our diagnosis, or we're embarrassed to admit that we might have fertility issues, or we've had a miscarriage, or all of these things tend to get swept under the carpet, yet the person has to still deal with it. And that's really why we created the membership, was to give people somewhere that they could come and feel supported, but really look at a broad range of things under the one roof. So that's so much fun. That's where I really love to dedicate my time. And within that, we have another podcast as well. So there's a lot, and we're just in the midst of writing a new book. So there's a few. Look, the thing is, there's lots of different ways that we are helping women to take charge of their hormones,
awesome.
And I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, it really is. Please make sure you send me all the links to the podcasts and books and things, and we'll just put them in the show notes, and that way we don't have to confuse anyone, and everyone can have a look. And
love it.
But it's all. So is there different focuses for the different podcasts, or?
So one of the podcasts that I'm on is called The Period Party.
That's right.
That's pretty self-explanatory. It's periods. We just started off that as something fun, and then lo and behold, people actually listened, which is really interesting. And now, there's literally not a day that goes by that someone doesn't say to me, "Oh, so I listened to this episode such and such on The Period Party." I'll be like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, isn't that awesome when you hear someone actually listens? It's like, woohoo.
Like, who knew? Who knew? So that's really fun, and I do that with a beautiful woman in the US. Her name's Nicole Jardim, and she goes by the title of the Period Fixer. And she's making some pretty big waves over there. So that's very exciting. And then my local podcast is The Wellness Collective, and that is with a radio host. So I grew up and we got a radio host. That's very, very big.
That's awesome.
Right. And she plays devil's advocate with me all the time, but we generally have a guest on that show. And that's a lot of fun. And, that's just really more all sorts of topics. It's not specific necessarily to women's health.
It's just health.
It's just health in general, and we try and make it funny and fun and, have a go at each other. It's pretty fun. And the other one that we generally do is for the members. So that's something that is closed away for the members and exclusive for them, just to give them a little bit more content. But yeah, they're all the things we do. It's really good.
That's good. Well, when you first started getting into Chinese medicine, what was the reason for that? Did you have your own health issues growing up, or were you really just interested in it?
I grew up in that house that for birthday parties, the kids would roll their eyes because it was full of what we would put in inverted commas health food. And I remember Mum would make, fruit men, and I would be mortified. I'd be like, Mum, please can we just have the rubbish food just for the birthday party? And she'll be like, no way.
Aww.
So I grew up in a house where health was an absolute priority. Food was medicine.
That's awesome.
I know. My mum lost her mum at quite a young age, and I think it really changed the way she looked at her health and the health of her family. So, my mum being my biggest inspiration, she is just one very determined, clever woman, and I guess it rubbed off. However, I did for work experience. I went and did work experience in both with a naturopath and in a hospital, which was kind of random. And when I started studying at uni, I moved away because I grew up in country Victoria, and you don't really have everyone moves away. There's no option. It's just what you do. You finish year 12, and that's what happens.
Whereabouts in Victoria? I was born in country Victoria.
Are you in Mildura?
I was born in Echuca.
Oh, are you?
Yeah.
There you go. We're neighbours.
We're practically sisters.
Oh, that's cute. So, I moved away from home, and it was like a license to eat whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted. And, I know my mum used to always say my sister would be the death of her because she had a very sweet tooth, and she'd always try and get away with, eating things that mum would say that she shouldn't. And I was sort of, I don't know, it didn't interest me as much. But when I did move away, I had a KFC right round the corner.
Oh, my goodness. KFC was my downfall too when I went to uni. Those chips.
And it was like, I know, it's the chips and the Zinger burgers. It would be like study break Zinger burger chips. And, I gained quite a bit of weight and found myself with pretty hefty period pain each and every month.
Oh, my goodness, so did I. But I didn't gain weight. I lost it.
Right. Well, just goes to show how constitutionally we're all different. But I remember at one point being in so much pain, I would be doubled over on the bathroom floor, and it would alternating between vomiting and passing out.
Oh,
and
what?
Just epic.
So passing out, wow.
I would pass out from the pain and then come back to again. And I remember just, I don't know what the turning point was. I think it probably was weight driven. And I was studying health, but I was studying health science at the time that didn't really lead anywhere, but it was a good lead in. And I remember deciding, you know what, I'm actually going to try and get, a little bit more fit and healthy. And even this is like, 20 years ago, let's be honest, more actually. And my idea at the time as a young woman of healthy was, salad rolls with a heap of bread and just avoiding the KFC and trying to drink more water. Like that's what I knew. So, that worked to a degree, and I did lose weight and my periods certainly became better, but it wasn't actually until I started studying Chinese medicine that I recognised, the imbalances that were existing in my body and things that I could do to change them. Having said that, I could not swallow Chinese herbs if my life depended on it. Like, they were so vile and foul. And
so you went in and prescribed them for other people.
Well, here's the thing, right? I couldn't. And I remember being really sick and going to the herbal clinic, and they prescribed me these raw herbs, and I was all excited. And I went home, and my gag reflex, I literally dry retched, and it came through my nose and everything. I was like, oh my goodness, I cannot do this. Like, I actually cannot do this. So it was very interesting. And I guess even though I continued to study Chinese medicine, I reckon pretty early on I knew there had to be another way because it was pretty bad. And so I guess, we do what resonates with us, and that's what attracts other people that are like us to us. And so definitely in the clinic, I never stocked raw herbs. I was like, oh, my goodness, I cannot expect anyone to do that if I can't do it. And so from very early on, we have always used patent medicines. We started off with ground herbs, but that didn't really work. I couldn't get people to really take them, but they were a great alternative for me. And then we moved into other things, and now, you know, I'm very less is more. I'm like, I need someone to go and take the least amount of things to get a result, because
that's awesome.
It's the world we live in. Yeah.
The harder it is, the less likely it's going to. I remember spending hundreds of dollars at the naturopath early on, and I'd go back a month later for a checkup, and he'd be like, well, did you take your herbs? And I'm like, I tried. And he's like, well, you know, you're not actually going to get well unless you do it. And I'm like, oh, I hate taking this stuff.
You know, the thing is too, when we actually start to take something and we feel better very quickly, then we keep on doing it. And I think that's really what I aim for with each and every patient. If I can say, okay, here's 2 things. We're going to start with these 2 things. I think that's possible in their mind. They're like, yeah, I can do that. I can do 2 things.
That's
and
good.
if I have them feeling better in 3 or 4 days, then they're going to be like, oh, my goodness, is it a coincidence I'm sleeping better? Oh, my bowels are moving, you know. And they'll keep on doing it. And they'll always say, oh, I don't know if it's the supplements or not, but I'm feeling like 80% better. I'm like, yeah, well, unless something else changed. You know, it's very interesting. We sit and we wait for our bodies to change, yet we don't do anything different in the meanwhile.
That is so true.
And, you know, I find it wild that and it's because I guess we live in hope that tomorrow will be better.
When I can be taking supplements or whatever, when I get a cold, I don't want to take anything. I just want to, you know, I don't know. It's like my brain switches off and I'm like, oh, I just can't be bothered. And I just lay in bed if I'm really sick with a cold. And I keep thinking, I'll get better. I
think to a degree we do have to rest, and it's a really good thing to do, but there are things that can help support us. Yeah, but I see this with patients all the time, that I think they just hope that tomorrow's going to be a better day. And I do. I hope for them too. I certainly hope tomorrow's going to be a better day.
Sometimes
but the reality
you have to do something.
Well, the thing, if you don't do anything different, it's probably going to be the same as today.
Yeah. That's what I learned. Well, I love that. I love the way that you help women, and I've been to one of your talks in Cairns, which was awesome. And you've helped me a lot. So can I go ahead and start asking you some questions?
Oh, please do.
I should probably say to you, maybe you pick a couple of the things that you get asked all the time first, because you'll know what they are.
Oh, sure. Well, so here's the thing I really get asked, and I wish there was an answer for this, but I'll try and answer it in a roundabout way. What is the one thing? Because people say to me all the time, what's the one thing I need to do?
If there was just one thing.
We have adopted this idea. Like, I want to make it really simple. Let's be honest about that.
Simple and fast.
Make that very clear and fast. But there is not one thing. There is no magic bullet. There is not, so I guess, you know, the common things that I'll be asked is, I have period pain. What do I need to do? Or I have ovulation pain. What do I need to do? They're very common for most women to have one or both of those things. And I guess the other common questions are around PCOS and endometriosis, and we can move into those. But I think for most women, I would say 90% of my patients would be estrogen dominant, and that is that they have too much estrogen in their body that is driving the rest of their hormones crazy. Now, it can present in many ways. Like you said before, some women will gain weight, others will lose it. It just depends on their constitution. And this is when it can be really useful to recruit someone that can see the things that you can't. However, I know that with some pretty simple changes, you can get your estrogen down in your body very quickly. And I say not only this is something that you can do, you actually must, because we are living at a time where women's cancers are at an all-time high, and we're sitting here scratching our head wondering why that is. We're wondering why so many women are having fertility issues, depressions that are high, anxiety, all of these things, and it's very often is linked back to too much estrogen in our body, and it's the life we live. You know, we're very overworked, we're often stressed, and stress is many things. Stress isn't just you running late to pick up your kids from school. Stress is, you know, how well your gut is assimilating, or what your gut permeability might be like, or if your liver is detoxifying your hormones properly, or if your emotions are where they should be at, or, do you wake up every day and look in the mirror and think, man, you look foul? Because that isn't really sending the best message back to your cells.
Right.
And they hear everything you say, and I think is really important. Or it might, when it comes to emotions, it's such a wild and deep topic, but it could be something that's happened to you in the past that you never dealt with because it was too painful. Or I don't know, food intolerance is another very big one that we don't see as being stressful. We just eat, and, if there's a result, well, great. And if there's not and we don't feel good, we might remove that food, but it doesn't fix the problem. So, there's probably I list for most patients between 8 to 12 things that I think stress could be for them. And then we work through those things that I've just mentioned, and some are more prominent than others. But normally when you get the ball rolling, a lot of them sort themselves out. So I would say to patients, all right, one of the most simple things you can do is remove toxins from your home, your makeup bag, your beauty cabinet, your cleaning products. It's not hard. There's great substitutes. Yes, of course, you can make your own. If you're like me, and I don't make a priority to make my own because I choose to spend my time elsewhere, I know I can still buy amazing green products from the supermarket. And, it's just whatever suits and works.
Depends if it's time or money that's the major issue for you.
Completely, totally, exactly. That is so true. And, I don't necessarily have the luxury of time, so I choose to purchase. But not everybody needs to do that. And so that is a very simple thing that you can do. But, most conventional products contain at least 80 chemicals that interact and interfere with your hormone balance. And if you were to do that one thing alone, that would have a pretty remarkable impact on your hormone health.
So true.
So I get people to do that. And even with things like makeup, I am very much that person that I'm not going to switch out my makeup if whatever you're telling me to use isn't going to perform. I'm not interested. I want to use hair shampoo that feels like detergent on my hair. Like, I just don't want to. So I am very keen to find alternatives, and there are so many good alternatives. We are so lucky. There is no excuse to have to use something that is full of toxins and chemicals. There's no need. And most of these other products that we're talking about are really kind to the environment as well, which is really important too. So, that's a really simple thing that we can start to do. Estrogen's also driven crazy from stress. And, we can't always control stress, but there are certainly, for the majority of us, we start to choose it as a habit because we chose it yesterday.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
We get wound up in this sort of vortex of choosing stress, and we don't really need to. So I say to patients all the time, I've taught you a lot of things. What's the one thing that stood out? And they'll say to me, well, when you ask me to get conscious of what I stress about and what warrants stress and what doesn't. And I'm like, really? I feel like we've covered a lot of ground and that's all you took.
I think it's just such a major issue for everybody, for most people.
It really is. It really is. So, I think we need to actually stop and be able to catch what's going on in our brain and ask ourselves, hang on a minute, does this actually matter? Am I going to lose a limb? Am I going to lose a child? Like, does it actually matter? Because I would say most of the time it doesn't, and most of the time we're just choosing stress because it gets the job done.
And it's a habit.
So it is. It's a really bad habit. So I get patients just to use 5 diaphragmatic breaths to take them out of fight or flight into rest and digest, and I really love them to do that before they eat,
it's a good idea.
because it can be a reminder. And often we're not ready to receive our food. So I guess this comes back to the whole idea of giving thanks for what you're about to eat.
Yeah, that's right.
But I really feel like that was part of that. That was part of good habits and self-care and nourishing your body and just checking back in, and am I ready to eat, or can I calm down so I am ready to eat? And then I find I have less digestive issues and my bowels work better and I can assimilate the nutrients from my food. Wow.
Yeah.
Who knew?
I remember
I
remember my naturopath telling me off for standing up and walking around while I ate. When your kids are little and you just feel like you just don't have time to sit. Like, it was mostly at breakfast and lunch. Dinner time we ate together. Yeah. But I had to learn how to just sit and relax and take my time and eat breakfast. It makes a big difference.
It really, really does. And then I guess the other thing that as a tangible tool, patients ask me all the time, does it really matter what I eat? And you can maybe answer.
Well, this is like our favourite subject.
It's so funny because everyone wants me to say no. No, it doesn't really matter. But it really does. I know. I remember when I interviewed Dr. Tom O'Brien for one of our podcasts. He's a very clever man all across autoimmune and gut health, and he's basically been able to prove that everybody has inflammatory illness.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of when that shows up. Anyway, I remember him saying food is either of benefit or deficit, and I was like, wow, that is so true.
It makes you think about what you eat, doesn't it?
I know, right? Like, you wouldn't knowingly go to your daughter, hey, babe, I've got a plate of amazing whole foods, or I've got that manky, whatever, hot dog over there. Look, you know what? That one really is not really great. So, but anyway, you choose. Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's sort of like we would never do to our daughters or sons. So why would we do that to ourselves? I think we can choose better. And but at the same time, I don't want people to put extra pressure on themselves either.
So that the stress levels go up.
Yeah, exactly. So this is where the 80-20 rule is really lovely. And I think we still need to live our lives and enjoy our lives and, really look at nourishing our bodies. But I would say as a rule for women that want to balance their hormones, fat and protein is essential at every meal. Fat and protein make your hormones. So if you don't have them, you don't make hormones. Right. So I would say to patients, fat and protein at every meal. And really, where possible, warm cooked foods is very Chinese medicine, but it makes the world of difference.
Yep.
And all we're trying to do is place less load on the digestive system so it can do its job. So I guess there are 3 things that really you can do to make inroads to your estrogen levels, to set yourself up for more balanced hormones, start to really think about the long-term effects of estrogen because it's not kind. But also, can I also say that estrogen's not the enemy. Okay. We need estrogen. Without it, we don't make our other hormones. Yeah. So it's about putting it into balance. And the reason that these things really, like chemicals and whatnot, it really are impacting us is because those chemicals actually mimic estrogen within our bodies. So our body doesn't know the difference between its own estrogen and these external estrogen or fake estrogens that drive our estrogen crazy. Our body just goes, oh, wow, more estrogen. It recognizes it as estrogen and kind of adds it to the estrogen pile. And we've got to get the estrogen pile down.
Yes. Okay, that's awesome. Well, there's some good takeaways right there. We'll recap at the end, but I think we'll go on to some of these questions because one of the questions that I got was about fertility and what's the best kind of diet to have if you're trying to get pregnant.
Yeah, so in my book Well and Good, I talk through fertility to no end, but I also use the tagline, fertility is not just about babies.
That's right.
Fertility is about a thriving reproductive system no matter what age you are, because at the end of the day, it shuts down as we know it because we associate fertility with having a baby, but it still keeps on working in different ways. And this is where we can run into some trouble too if we perhaps have to have our ovaries or our uterus removed. That can cause a whole lot of issues because our ovaries actually take on another role once we do transition through menopause. We can talk about it in a minute. Anyway, but when it comes to fertility as such, I have foods that I specifically advocate for that have been used for years and like treats like. So, if we look at something like this is a funny example, but if you look at figs, for example, figs they heat in twos and they look very like a part of the male anatomy, and if you open them up, it's lots of little seeds inside and very much great for sperm and egg health. So we start to look at foods, same with olives. They're really high in antioxidants, really help to clean up damage from things like chemicals that I'm talking about before. There's lots of foods like that. I give loads of those examples in my book, but really fundamentally, like I said, fat and protein at every meal, foods that work on supporting digestive health, probiotics, prebiotics, and collagen, anything that's going to help to make the gut wall nice and strong. Most of our infertility issues are due to inflammation in the body, which just comes down to leaky gut, really. So really making sure that we're looking after the digestive system. But the biggest thing I say to patients, fertility and food, and that is very important, but the biggest thing you can do is shift your mindset to be ready for the baby. And I think a lot of people, they either want to sort of slit it into their daily life and think, oh, yeah, I like the idea of a baby. I'm not sure where it would fit, but let's do that because it's about that time in our lives. If we don't do it now, it's sort of never.
You better hurry up.
Yes, we get told that, and I think age is just a number, and I really don't put much emphasis on it, because I can have a woman who might be in her 40s in an amazing health. She could be potentially more fertile than a woman in her 30s who's not looking after herself. It doesn't mean the woman in her 30s is infertile. It just means as it stands, because there's high stress, poor diet, maybe she drinks or smokes or whatever else, her fertility is not optimal and her body won't prioritize that. So it becomes a ranking order almost, and fertility is literally the last on the list. It's sort of like, you don't need to survive, so we might just turn that off. So I say to patients, can you, as of today, please start to pretend and behave as if you're pregnant? If you were pregnant right here and now, how would your day be different? How would you wake up in the morning? How would you go to bed at night?
Rest
would
more.
You be working at 8 o'clock? Would you? Would you make the same choices? No, you wouldn't, actually.
That's right.
So if we want this to happen, we need to replicate what we want to happen. And, we can apply this obviously to any issue within our lives. But we're very good on focusing on what we don't have. And we're not very good at focusing on what we want. So I get women to associate, and I try and say, okay, well, if you're pregnant, how would that feel? They probably feel excited, maybe a little bit nervous, but it would be a good nervous, happy, whatever the emotions are, and start to really tap into what it would feel like in your mind and really start to associate with those feelings rather than the opposite of that, which is, well, next door neighbour couldn't get pregnant, such and such says I have this much of a percentage of conception, blah, 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 blah. And also I wouldn't personally want to be the average of the population. I want to be the best.
That's right.
So, once you start to move into this headspace and you start to nourish your body properly and think good thoughts and really set yourself up for fertility, the other stuff doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter if someone else, it took them X amount of months or they needed IVF or whatever. It's your own way, and that's all that matters. So how can we optimize that? But we are living at a time where fertility is compromised, and for some of those reasons that I've just mentioned.
Someone did ask. Now, I have no idea what this is, but I'm just going to ask you because you will. Are AMH levels a true indication of fertility?
Love it. So the AMH, or anti-Müllerian hormone, is a test that we do to basically detect a woman's fertility potential.
Okay.
It's supposed to be sort of how many eggs have you got in the kitty, basically. It's very interesting, this test. I have long loathed the AMH test. Mostly because I've never met a woman that I couldn't improve her AMH, which makes me wonder, is the test all it's cracked up to be? Because technically we're supposed to be born with all of our eggs. We're supposed to be born with a certain amount of eggs. There's a number, whatever that number is, that's how many we have, and we know that they decline as we get older. If that is true, how is it that I'm able to make someone's AMH improve if technically no improve? I've seriously, hand on heart, never seen someone's AMH go down.
Okay.
So, I know it's a very questionable test. I've spoken to lots of people about this test and got everyone's opinions. I think it's very grey. I think it depends on when the test was taken, how long it takes for them to sample the blood, who's reading it. And even then, I think it's just not a true indication. I have a theory, and I think that our body will always put its best foot forward when it can and will. But when we are not operating out of a place of abundance in our health, and there's this internal deficiency that's going on, I just think that our eggs, I don't know, they go into hiding.
Yeah, our body knows that it's not the right time to have a baby.
We're Correct. It's protecting.
Yeah.
So we can get so frustrated with our body and we can be like, I hate my body. Why is it doing this to me?
Yeah.
This is a common thing I see in the clinic.
Okay.
And I just want to remind women that your body's doing exactly what it should under the circumstances.
That's
and you
right.
should be pretty proud of it for doing that. It's protecting you, which I know is hard to hear,
Yeah.
but it also can be motivation to do something different, like I said before. So AMH is definitely not you wouldn't put all your eggs in that basket, that's for sure.
Good pun.
So to speak. And you would, I do talk about this again in my book as well, how to improve your AMH, and that's just by improving your fertility on the whole. The bonus of all of this, like I said, given it's at the bottom of the ranking order, you improve everything.
Yes, that's right.
It's not you just improve fertility. And again, there's that one thing, like I just want to improve my fertility. I love that that's your motivation, but guess what? As a bonus, you get to improve everything along the way, which I love because you can't lose out. It's never going to be a waste of time. You're never going to get to the end of it and go, well, that was useless.
Yeah.
Because it's totally worth all of that. So, yeah, definitely don't take AMH as a be-all and end-all.
That's good. Now, what about the people who are actually trying not to get pregnant? So can we talk about contraception? This is like we know the pill's not great. If you want to just go ahead and explain why and maybe go ahead and explain about any other contraceptive devices, because there's a few questions about those as well.
Sure. I've long gotten in trouble about talking about the pill and my disorder for it. Okay, I'm very happy to admit that. I have gotten myself in a lot of hot water over it.
And just say what you want to say.
No, I'm very happy. Joe, I've worked out ways. It's not about what you say, it's about how you say it.
That's true. That's true.
So I think this is the fact. Let's stick with the facts.
Okay.
And the facts are that the pill is the number one most prescribed drug worldwide. And it is used for so many other things other than for contraception.
Yes.
And I think that's where the problem lies.
Yeah, and that's
if
why
you are
I was
it,
given it at 19 for my ovulation pain and pimples and...
Yeah, because you had a hormone imbalance that nobody ever bothered to say, hey, we should probably try and fix your hormones first. No, here's the pill. And look, I think I'm not bagging out any forms of medicine. I think that there can be a place for these things. Sometimes it can save somebody and it can give them a minute where they just need to get their thoughts together and work out their plan of attack.
And we often say that on this podcast, that there's times when you may have to resort to these things, but it's good to know the pros and cons.
Yeah, and it's not a viable long-term solution, and that's where I get my knickers in a knot.
Yes.
And I just think it's funny, knickers in a knot, eggs in one basket. We're really
You're doing well. You're doing well. Ford would be proud of you.
Totally. Well, it's prescribed for everything from period pain through to depression, PMS, ovulation pain, missing periods. That's the one that makes me laugh the most, because there is no way on this earth the pill has ever been able to give somebody a period.
Yeah.
It gives you a withdrawal bleed.
Right.
And this is what women aren't told. They're not told you're not actually having a period. You are just withdrawing from the hormones that you've been taking to give your body a rest, and then you're going to go back on and start the process again.
Right.
And, it doesn't allow your hormones to go through their natural ebbs and flows each and every month. And if the natural ebbs and flows are imbalanced, that's when you're going to get symptoms, and that's what you need to look at. What is your body telling you? What is it trying to communicate to you that needs to be fixed? And I can tell you that signs and symptoms far outweigh any test result for most people, because it's real life. It's in real time.
Yep.
And I find that tests can be a really good guide, but they are not definitive, and unfortunately that's just the nature of them. So, and it depends who's reading it, and we can go right into that. But that's where I have issues with the pill, and because like all medications, unfortunately, it has its way with our gut and our liver, and really causes some major disruption. It's pretty noisy. No one's saying, oh, Joe, we need you to take the pill, but hey, whilst you're doing that, we really should be on a multivitamin, a fish oil, and probably some probiotics and prebiotics. That'd be okay.
Yeah.
And then you might go, oh, you know what? Okay, well, I get that it's a drug, but at least I'm trying to be proactive.
Yeah.
And look, the pill is bigger than that, and generally most medications have a major impact, but at least we are doing something to support our body all the while.
Yeah.
And I'll say to patients, look, I can maybe improve your health by 40% maybe if you are taking medications. it's not to say that we wouldn't want to do that. Of course we would. But again, I always say to patients, I want you on the lowest to no dose of any medication.
Definitely.
Alongside your doctor, and I'll work alongside people's doctors all the time. I have great relationships with lots of doctors, and that's what we aim to do, because most medicines, not just the pill, are not necessarily a long-term viable solution.
That's right.
And usually it's treating a symptom and not a problem. And so doctors love this because it keeps their patients happy.
Yeah.
And why wouldn't they love it? So it's great. We're really turning a corner with this stuff.
That's good.
The pill really, it can't fix our problems that we've been led to believe it can. And it's only now that the long-term effects of it are really coming to light, and we are accepting that we are living at a time with major hormone imbalance, and this is one of the contributing factors.
What about is it Implanon?
Implanon.
Yeah, that thing.
I put them in the same basket. The Implanon, Mirena, the copper IUD. The copper IUD is a little bit different, but the Implanon and the Mirena are both releasing synthetic hormones into your body.
Yeah.
It's not ideal.
No.
It's doing the same thing, except you're not even getting a break in between. My biggest gripe with any intrauterine device is that they often migrate to other areas of the body, and then they need to be surgically removed, and that can cause a whole lot of other issues.
That sounds awful.
Also, let's not forget, I only ever see the women that are hating on their bodies, not loving their hormones. And, I don't see the women out there that are on the Mirena going, this is the best choice I ever made. And they don't need me. So I can't comment on them. I can only comment on the ones that I see and the research that I see. But I think, the Mirena seems to be taking over from the pill.
Yeah.
At least the pill, if you choose to take it, you can also stop taking it when you need to. So if you're not going to take the pill, this is the number one thing I get asked, I guess, is, well, if not the pill, then what? And I'll say, look, the biggest gift a woman can learn is understanding her own body. Yeah. And sadly, we've disconnected from that because of synthetic contraceptions have done the work for us. I've been with my husband for 15 years. We have 2 beautiful children. They were both conceived the months that we tried to conceive them, and I don't want any more babies, and I'm fairly much testament to saying if you know your body, you can never get it wrong.
Right.
I've had doctors say to me, you'll be back, you'll have a whoopsie. I'm like, oh, my goodness, I actually would love a whoopsie because that's probably the only way we're going to have another baby. It's not going to happen. I think we're at a point where we're you know what, there's just a lot going on, and I think that would be really unfair.
Yeah.
But that was probably the only way it would happen. There is no way known I could have a whoopsie. I understand what my body is telling me each and every day, and I hope I could be proven wrong. But to date, we're kind of getting.
I think of all people, the whoopsie probably wouldn't happen to you. So
I think that we underestimate our bodies, and we take something that flatlines our hormones for 28 days of the cycle when there might only be 3 or 4 of them that we're actually fertile for. That's just bizarre.
Yeah, that's true.
So I teach women how to understand their bodies. I have an e-course called Debunking Ovulation, and that's what it's about. It's about how to understand your body, what it's telling you, when you're fertile, when you're not, how to use that as contraception or prevention or whatever you want to call it. Can't call it contraception because it's not synthetic.
Yes, okay.
So it's called pregnancy prevention. And really learning to understand your body, and that to me is the most valuable thing. I also get in trouble because people say, well, it's really irresponsible to be sending a message out to young women that they shouldn't be taking contraception. I think that's just weird to say that.
That's weird too.
I also think it's very ambitious to think that a 15-year-old can remember to take a pill at the same time every single day. But my biggest issue with this is that if 15-year-old girls are not using protection when they're having sex and they're exposing themselves to STDs, STDs cause a magnitude of problems. Some of them are not reversible, and that argument doesn't fly with me because condoms are pretty effective if they're used properly. So I'm all about, I know it's a bit high school, but if you're really worried, then a barrier method is your best option. And I think that information is power.
What about people that want to do natural birth control, but they're having a lot of trouble with their health or broken sleep cycles, and so the charting and temperatures and things like that don't work, and they're just finding all of that kind of thing difficult? What would you say they're basically the barrier method?
Barrier method, but also why is it not clear?
Yeah.
There has to be a reason why your body's doing weird things.
Well, I know, for instance, one lady that's in my GAPS program, I know her quite well, and she's major histamine issues, a lot of gut issues. They've been working really hard to heal, but it's taking a long time. They've got the MTHFR problems and all sorts of stuff. So for her, it's very difficult.
Well, I think the thing is that if she was to go and use something like a Mirena or an Implanon or even the copper IUD, I think she'd probably find her symptoms would be eventually pronounced and worsened.
Yeah, definitely.
As a result. So she's kind of not really got that option, I wouldn't think anyway.
I don't think she'd go there anyway.
Yeah, right. So I think that it's very hard. I get it. And sometimes it is a battle. And, you know, we're all genetically different. And I think this is the challenge, is that we are predisposed to things, and we can thank our parents for that. We don't really get to choose what our genes give us. What we can do is try and identify what those are and try and influence our genes to behave in a certain way. And epigenetics is, you know, such a wild field, but at least if we can understand genetically what's going on, then we can start to find ways to trick our genes into behaving better. But, you know, we can do that also by our diet and our lifestyle and our thoughts and, you know, so many things. I think for this person that you're particularly talking about, unfortunately, she kind of has to keep on keeping on.
Yeah, that's it,
eventually, the corner does get turned. But also the tricky part, and I don't know her, but the tricky part is that, you know, the mindset and the mind around that needs to really, you've got to check in with that all the time, because it can be easy to default back to hate my body, why is this happening, you know, I knew better, and just to be really kind and you know, accept what is, and then what are we going to do moving forward. That's mindset is a powerful thing. Just quickly before we change topic, the copper IUD I get asked about a lot. I find it causes hideous hormone issues because it's copper, and when there's too much copper in your body, that can lead to a host of other issues, including excess estrogen. It really depletes zinc, and you know, we just need to be really mindful. I guess for a short period of time, if you had to sit me down and hold a gun to my head, I might go, maybe that would probably be the best option for a short period of time. I don't know. There's not really an ideal choice other than barrier methods really are your best friend.
And your ebook, sorry, I should just get you to explain that. So people can go onto your website and download the...
Oh, yeah. So we have, I didn't tell you this at the start when you're like, what else do you have? We have equal.
Because I remember that those were quite helpful. I've had a few people talk about them. Yeah,
so we have 4 e-courses. I'm in the process of putting a 5th one together, but all in good time. Debunking ovulation, debunking PCOS, debunking stress, and debunking your thyroid. So each was just a natural progression to the next, because I discovered women didn't understand their bodies first and foremost. So we created debunking ovulation. And then there was all these women with polycystic ovaries or the syndrome or endometriosis as well. And that e-course was created more for them. But one of the things I kept saying in debunking PCOS was, you got to learn to manage stress. And people were saying, well, how do I do that? But then we created debunking stress, and then, you know, so many other women had thyroid issues that were affecting their fertility and their hormone balance, so then we created debunking your thyroid. But the final of those e-courses, I don't know whether we say final, but the next one will all be about emotions and emotional health and well-being, because I think that's part of the missing puzzle for so many people, the biggest challenge.
That's really good. So back to the contraception. So what about the tube tying sort of thing? You mentioned in passing that that's not great. Like after menopause, your ovaries are needed for something. So can you talk about that?
Sure. I don't know about tubal litigation when they tie your tubes. I know a lot of women get pain from that. I guess it's not a bad option. But I would say that hysterectomy, where they don't leave the ovaries. Your ovaries are really important throughout your whole life. Obviously, throughout your reproductive years, they are what is releasing an egg for ovulation. And then, you know, we need that to either make a baby or we shed our lining and we start all over again. as we get older, the ovaries want to pass their job on to the adrenals in terms of making certain hormones. But also they start to make other hormones like testosterone, or not start to, they start to make it in higher amounts, I should say, or make more of certain hormones. And if we don't have our ovaries there to help us make things like testosterone, that can be a disaster for women once they transition through menopause if they don't have any testosterone. A woman that's going through or has gone through menopause has more testosterone in her body than I think it is something ridiculous like a teenage boy or something along those lines.
Why is that?
A lot. It becomes one of our major hormones, and we need it.
Okay.
And it gives us our drive. It stops us from things like vaginal dryness.
Yep.
It keeps us alive and well.
Okay.
So it is really important that we keep our testosterone in check. I'll have to find what that quote is. I remember being blown away by it. I read it. I've written it somewhere. It's a lot of testosterone. I can't remember. It was a teenage boy at the start of puberty or what it was. Anyway, bottom line is we still need it. And if our ovaries aren't there, the only other thing that's making very small amount of testosterone are our adrenals. But the tricky part here is if we're really stressed and our adrenals can't take on the role of the ovaries become a little bit frustrated, and menopause becomes a pretty lengthy and problematic time. So each of these endocrine either glands or organs is relying on the next for certain things to happen. And if that chain is broken or disrupted, it will lead to hormone imbalance. So I would say where possible, if you're having – one of the main reasons women have a hysterectomy is because of heavy bleeding. If you're having heavy bleeding, it's probably because you've got too much estrogen in your body, and that's where I would start. And at least once you've cleared estrogen, you can then see what you're left with and then go, all right, well, we had to do that first to get to this and see, actually the crux of the issue is the adrenals are not playing the game or whatever it might be. But you have to start with that, and I gave you some good tools at the beginning as to where you can start to make inroads around that. But I would always be looking to why. And, of course, there are instances where hysterectomies save lives, and we're not disputing that at all. But I think that it shouldn't be a first point of call. And we should explore the options. And also, once we know why, chances are the reason why is going to probably affect you long term. So if you're just removing the evidence of the problem and you're not fixing the root cause, it's going to manifest somewhere else.
So that's right.
This is the same. I find it really interesting with something like the BRCA gene and women having breast removal or augmentation because they've found that they're carriers of the BRCA gene. It's like, well, your reproductive system doesn't just stop at the breasts. It is a whole system, and we need it. And that worries me that we might be making these decisions without having the full understanding of what's going on. It's just that, another example of this is abnormal cells in the cervix. A lot of women are being diagnosed with abnormal cells. I was one of them. And our initial shotgun reaction is just remove the cells. They're dangerous, which is just like scraping the surface off. It's like pulling the dead leaves off a tree. It's sort of like, doesn't fix it.
Why are they dying?
Yeah, exactly. So it's sort of like, I remember doing that. I remember one day being in the yard going, this tree's all lovely, but it's got these dead leaves. And I started pulling them off. I'm like, this is an awesome analogy because this is actually what we do so often is we remove the evidence of the problem. We don't actually fix it.
It's all better.
So exactly. So again, I don't say to women, don't do that. It's like, okay, well, if that's necessary, let's do that. But let's look at why. Let's, endometriosis, why are those cells growing? Why is your body doing this? And really get to the root cause so that you can actually create change, like we said before.
One lady another one in my gut health group who has had terrible trouble with, she had the, what do you call it, HG during pregnancy. So severe nausea, vomiting. She got very, very thin. I think she's got 4 kids, and so she's always done the natural planning for contraception, and for 10 years. And the last pregnancy was a accident. And she's been working on healing the gut through GAPS, and she said her usual fertility signs are absent, but she was obviously still fertile because she got pregnant. It was very hard for her to tell. So that's why she was thinking of maybe she should just get her tubes tied. For someone like that, I guess again, the only thing you can really say is barrier.
Yeah, well, you know what? There's another really great guy you should check out. His name's Dr. Sean Tassone. He's in the US.
Yeah.
He is a gynecologist and reproductive medicine man, and he started doing these. Have you ever heard of the Assure device?
No.
It's like a coil that they were placing in the tubes, and the coil would cause scarring to grow, and then the scarring would block the tube.
Right.
So it's litigation, but they were using these coils anyway. He had performed several hundred of these procedures, and he was having all these women come in with excruciating pain.
Oh, the poor things.
Basically, I know, right? And, they weren't told that was possibly a side effect, and he didn't know. He was like, well, I don't know what's going on. Everyone tells me it's safe. Anyway, he started to get pretty noisy and vocal about these devices and how he was having to remove them and the long-term effects. And it actually has probably been the best thing that ever happened to him, because he now is very holistic in his approach. He's amazing. But it's really interesting to talk to someone of that deals with this all the time. And we were talking about men having a vasectomy in the same vein, because I've always said, just send them out. Send them over a snip. It's a lot easier. But we were saying the other day,
thing, really.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
We were saying the other day, where does the semen go then?
Exactly.
And he's like, well, this is the question.
Yeah.
He's like, this is why we get antibodies. And he's like, I don't think that there's a perfect sterilization.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't think this is actually a great long-term solution.
Yeah.
And, we really got to think about the long-term consequences. So I don't know how to answer what the best is. I think we need to collect all of the facts and then sit with what feels right for us each individual and go from there. And I know, we get to a certain age when we probably don't want any more babies, and that's fine. I still come back to, how can we understand our body best? And there is going to be a few dodgy situations where we're not going to know.
Yeah.
But I think for the majority of women, that generally their bodies do run pretty smoothly if you give them the attention that they need.
Yeah. Oh, we're running out of time. I've still got heaps of questions. Okay, well, can we quickly move on to periods?
Yes.
So people with irregular and painful periods, and one lady was mentioning that she'd had terrible periods her whole adult life until about 3 years ago, when she went paleo and then doing gaps. It really helped. And she said now they're regular and pain-free, but since having kids 11 years ago, the first 2 or 3 days are exceptionally heavy, and she's not sure if is that a natural thing? Is that bad?
Yeah, so what's interesting is, and this is totally the title of my next book, not this one coming, but the one after. I'm very lucky that my publishers are like, keep writing.
Oh, that's awesome.
Because no one talks about what happens to our bodies after we have babies. It's just like, you're generally in your mid-30s and you'll be fine until you're about 50-something, and then you might go through menopause. We still are cyclic. Things still change. Our periods change, and then they change again, and then they're probably going to change again. And so I think women need to understand that generally, whether you've had kids or not, your periods tend to get heavier before they then get lighter, before they then get irregular, before you go through menopause.
Right.
So I think it's important, but also what I would want to know, is she estrogen dominant? Because the whole point of estrogen is to build, well, not the whole point, but one of the things it does is builds your lining each and every month. So if you can imagine that at the start of the month, the lining's really thin, you've got a period, you shed that, estrogen starts to kick in to build the lining. It's building until you get to midway through the cycle, progesterone kicks in. And then it's the opposite of that. It starts to decline until it then sheds again, and you start the process all over again. Now, the thicker the lining, the more there is to shed, the heavier a period is going to be, right?
Yeah.
So we need to get estrogen in check. And if estrogen is in check, the best way I find to do that is to regulate through the liver. It's very easy to clear. Your body's very clever to clear excess hormones generally through the bowel, and they will bind to fibre, is to also look at, all right, I've done that, still heavy, then I look at someone's gut and just make sure that that's all in check as well.
Okay.
So she's done that, but she might still be estrogen dominant, and I would say start to look at regulating the liver. A really simple liver cleanse can often be really useful.
Is that your next ebook?
That's actually a free course on my website.
Oh, you're the best.
5-day cleanse course.
Sorry, what was it called?
It's called the 5-day cleanse course.
There you go.
It's basically just hold your hand through 5 days of cleansing, sets you up from the beginning, eases you in, then bang, you're in it. And yet people generally hate me for the first 3 days. It's like, oh my gosh, this is my version of hell. And then come day 4, I get emails like, oh my goodness, Nat, this is just the best feeling. Aww. Can I please keep going?
Oh, that's good.
It's very funny. Very funny.
And if someone does have heavy periods, is there something they can... someone just asked about progesterone cream and things like that. So basically, you don't need that. You just need to work on decreasing estrogen.
Correct. You know what? We're mad for the one thing. There's the one thing. Yeah. Like, oh, wow.
Give me a quick
well, it's really common, and I'm really glad you just asked that because what happens when we have high estrogen is generally we have low progesterone.
Yeah.
That's just by nature. So we go, we'll just give you some progesterone. And then the body goes, but estrogen's still high, so I'm still going to have all these crazy symptoms. Just because you've given me progesterone does not fix the problem. No. If you can naturally lower estrogen, progesterone will naturally rise.
Right. Perfect. Yeah. See if there's anything else that I can fit in quickly. Did you want to mention anything about endometriosis? Because that's sort of, and PCOS, because that's sort of a big part of what you do.
Yeah, so I think the facts of that don't really change. It's a genetic component, like we spoke about before, whether or not you get dealt PCOS, thyroid issues, endometriosis, IBS, whatever. It really does come down to your genetic predisposition. That doesn't mean you can blame it on your genes or just go, well, my mum had this, so I have it, so I'll just accept it. I think that we can always set our body up from optimal health, and we just got to work out where to start. And that can be tricky. That's why you recruit someone generally to help you. But I would say that what I've been speaking about doesn't really change, whether it's endo, PCOS, infertility. Still start with getting your estrogen in check, get your gut working properly, your liver happy, and see what you're left with. Yeah, and see what you're left with. And very often that cannot be enough. But all the while, you can't just not do all of that and not look at where stress is coming from. You do need to remove stress, definitely.
Do you ever notice any links with parasites and endometriosis or anything?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yes, definitely. That's another whole kettle of fish.
Okay, we won't go there, but yes.
No, but I will say this. It's just another stress on the body, isn't it? It's just another form of stress.
So that's something to look into.
So again, definitely. Yeah, parasites are pretty tricky to deal with, but once you get there, Chinese medicine's amazing for dealing with parasites.
Oh, that's awesome to know. I know in GAPS the recommendation is work on healing the gut for at least, a few months. And then deal with the parasites, because if you have like high toxicity and a lot of gut issues, the parasites will just vamp up again.
Absolutely. And this is very Chinese medicine as well. I'm not from the clearing school. I am from the nourishing school. And
that's right.
You need to build to then be able to make the body strong enough to then deal with what you need next to give it. Yeah,
perfect.
Definitely.
That's what we always have heard, for those going towards the menopause side of things, someone asked, they've seemed to have gotten an increase in autoimmune issues with menopause. Is that common?
Well, I think the change in hormones is quite interesting, and can cause all sorts of wonderful things to happen. I think any event within the body that causes stress is going to possibly trigger all sorts of things to happen. So I'd say that's what's happening there, is that they've already probably got some underlying hormone imbalance, which the body is finding stressful to transition, and therefore then their immune system is lowered and they're getting these other unwanted signs and symptoms.
But really all the things that you've talked about are things that help with autoimmune as well.
That's exactly right. Yeah, exactly. And this is what I love. We've complicated this so much.
And separated it all into little boxes as if there's going to be a fix for each different one, where really it's the same fix.
Correct.
Yeah.
I think the reality is that, look, it is a complex system, but let's simplify it so that we can actually use it to our advantage. And, there is systems within systems, and we can dig right into, various axes and hormone axis of the body.
But there's basic first steps for everyone.
Correct. And you have to start with those.
Yes.
And if you don't, then you can't jump, you can't walk run before you crawl, or whatever the thing is. You need to move through.
Basically, whether you're going through PCOS or terrible periods or menopause or moodiness or sleep problems or hair falling out or all of those things, really, you've got to start with those first things that you talked about, which is detoxing your body and your home, lowering stress, and working on a nutritious, easy to digest diet.
Yeah, and get them. Yeah,
is that
definitely
what you
get the mind happy.
To wrap 100%. Things up, would you? Yes. So the stress that would be included in the stress, the emotions.
Absolutely. You've got to remove the driver. We can go and eat the most plentiful diet and get the right amount of sleep and exercise well. But if every day you're telling your body the wrong thing, then none of it's going to work. So the mind is really hard, and I get that and appreciate that. But I have those patients all the time that say, but I do everything that you tell me to do. And I'm like, well, that leaves us with one big piece of the puzzle, and that's what's your mind saying? Yeah. So, definitely.
Well, I think that was, I'll just mention here that I had an appointment with Nat recently, and I think, like you say, the stress thing, at first when you said, have you been stressed? I was like, no, I don't think so. I'm fine. I feel fine. And then after I get off the phone, I start thinking and I go, well, I suppose I was stressing out this morning about the kids doing such and such, and I was, feeling overwhelmed with my work, and I have been pretty tired because I've been traveling for a week and had
I know, right? Well, you know what patients say to me?
I was away, and
absolutely, patients say their default answer to that when I say, I don't even ask someone if they're stressed anymore. I ask them what they do for work, so I work backwards.
Okay.
But anyway, if I say to someone, are you stressed? Oh, no more than the average, or I cope pretty well with stress. Yeah. No, that's not what I'm asking.
Because when I think of are you stressed, I think of am I crying? Am I feeling depressed? Am I feeling anxious? Am I having panic attacks? No, I'm not doing any of that. I'm fine.
Yeah. I know we do, but we've got to catch that out, because if we don't change that, nothing's going to change.
That's right. So relaxation is a big thing, and pulling back from all the crazy and getting to bed early and learning to say no and all of those things.
Absolutely, all of that. It's really hard, but we must. You're right.
I actually have gotten heaps better at that. But, it's always something to work on, isn't it?
Absolutely. We can never stop with that, unfortunately, but good. It's, good reminders. We've got to constantly be reminding ourselves. It's very hard.
We do. Well, thank you so much, Nat. I've taken up a lot of your time, but if anyone has any questions for you, can they go onto your Facebook page, or how do you?
Yes, of course, please. Okay. Facebook, Instagram, any of those. I like to try and communicate on there as much as I can. But just my website has so much information, and I know you'll put the link here somewhere.
Yes.
I would say just go over there and search.
That's right.
Like if you've got a question, search
download
it.
Those ebooks. They're really helpful.
There's lots of helpful things.
And then you've got your book, which is what is it called again? I've forgotten.
Well and Good.
Well and Good.
Yeah, Well and Good. Yeah, totally. And the new one coming out is actually aimed at young women, so that'll be very exciting, because I think that's really where we need the education.
I'm looking forward to that. I'll get that for my daughter. And also your program, how can they find that? Your membership, sorry.
Yep, head to the website and you'll find it all there. There's a big banner. You can't miss it. You don't get the choice to miss it. Yeah. It's impossible.
So if you need super duper help, get into that group and that will be awesome. Perfect. And you also
try it out for $1. It's $1 for 7-day trial. So you might want to do that before you commit. Yeah.
And are you still traveling a bit?
We are going to New Zealand next month. That's very exciting.
Where will you be over there?
I will be in Auckland, and then we are actually doing a New Zealand tour next year.
Awesome.
I've got a few events scattered around. Most of them are in Melbourne at the moment coming up, but we travelled for the first half of this year, so I don't need to take the second half off, as you know.
Yes,
I do. Pretty hard.
Full on with kids.
We will no doubt definitely next year there'll be something else on the radar for sure.
Okay, and they can find out about all of that on your website, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Please do.
Well, thank you so much, and we really appreciate it, because these things are things that do stress us out and make it all the worse for us. So we're gonna work on detoxing and de-stressing and improving our diet, aren't we, girls?
Love it. And if I can help in any way, please don't hesitate to ask.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much, Nat. Love you.
Thank you for having me. Bye, love.
See ya.
Bye.
This has been a production of TheWellnessCouch.com. Check us out on Facebook and join in the conversation on Facebook.com/The Wellness Couch. Subscribe to each show on iTunes and check us out on Twitter. The Wellness Couch, streaming wellness into your lives. Whilst the Wellness Couch presenter endeavor to provide accurate and helpful information to their listeners, these podcasts cannot take into account individual circumstances and are not intended to be a substitute for health and medical advice from a qualified health professional. You should always seek the advice of a qualified health professional before acting on any of the information provided by any of the Wellness Couch podcasts.